Wow, welcome back. Maybe 30 seconds, 20 seconds early, but who's counting, right? No, welcome back to the afternoon session. I hope everybody had a great morning so far, and I hope everybody enjoyed lunch. Really appreciate everybody coming out. It's time for our second keynote of the Deutsche Goldmesse, and it's with Clem Chambers. Clem, if you don't know him, he runs a website, aNewFN. He's a market commentator, and we spoke on our YouTube channel about 3 months ago, so I'm really curious about your update, because Gold is for War is the title of the presentation, and it is looking dire out there. And it seems like the departing US president is trying to stir up some stuff that I don't fully agree with personally, because it doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe you can make sense of it for us and tell us how it's good for gold. Clem, really appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for coming out.
That'd be my pleasure.
It is your audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'd just like to make a quick correction. I ran aNewFN and for you Canadians, also Investors Hub, which are two very, very large private investor platforms for information. I've started a new business called aNewFN, which is basically a follow-on from that, which will bring the next generation of information to private investors, and that's coming. It's out there. It's open for anybody who wants to be involved in the beta test. But anyway, that's not why I'm here. I'll give you a little bit of background in addition to that. I used to write the Wired market column in Wired magazine back in the .com. Any of you that are technology people will probably have bumped into Wired. I've written for Forbes now for 20 years. And you can see what I've written. It's all in the record, so my calls and my ideas are there, and rather than predicting the past, which a lot of people seem to like to do, you can see what I have been predicting for the future over the last 20 odd years, and I think I've got a reasonably good record. Recently you'll see me saying, oh, gold just broke out. When it broke out of its range, it's going to go mad now, and as we all know, it's gone in our direction very much so. Disclosure, I do own quite a lot of gold, and Kai made a little bit of a mistake this morning by saying that I live in France. It's important for me to say I live in Monaco. As you would expect for somebody who might call the market correctly, I make my money mainly in the market. Now, let me take you back a long way. When I was a little kid, 10 years old, my father, who was a commodity speculator, made very, very, very serious money in the commodity markets. And, you know, he did very, very well in that. And these days, you'd be looking at 9-figure sums. And he had a little earpiece attached to the telephone, so I could pick it up and listen to him with his brokers in the markets. So I've been trained in, this was commodity markets with all that crazy leverage stuff, ever since I was 10 years old. And I got to the point where I could see around me all the other kids at the public school I was at and how their parents, in comparison, didn't have the proverbial pot into. And so I asked him, I said, Dad, how are you making all this money? And as I said, this is serious amounts of money. And he said to me, the markets are very simple. All you've got to do is know which direction the market is going in. That's it. You don't have to know. If you don't know, what are you doing? All you've got to do is know which way the market is going. So as a 10-year-old, I thought, that can't be right. It can't be that simple. You know, how is he doing this? And I just parked that in my brain, how's he doing this? So about 20 years later, I'm stood in a river in Scotland, up to my nipples in cold water, panning for gold. And with an old gold panner who liked to pan in Scotland, you know, it's a hobby as well as a business, but not in Scotland, it's purely a hobby. And he said to me, if you think it's gold, it isn't. If you know it's gold, it is. And I thought, well, what the devil does that mean? So no, I'm panning away. Oh, look, there's a golden sparkly thing, mica, as you'll get when you pan in a river. And you think it's gold. And I said, I think I've got gold. And he looked at it, and that's mica. So anyway, a couple of hours pass, and my body temperature drops by a couple of degrees. But anyway, in the bottom of my pan is a little nugget, tiny little nugget. And I knew immediately it was gold. I knew it was gold. And that's the same with the market. If you think it's going up, you don't know. If you know it's going up, you know. And it doesn't matter whether it's a commodity, a currency, an equity. If you think it's going up, you don't know. If you know it's going up, you can tell the difference. you all here know gold is going up. You wouldn't be here if you didn't know it was going up, okay? So that's a given. Now, gold has always bugged me, and I've, as I say, have a reasonably decent part of it in Switzerland, and but it's always bugged me because everyone goes, oh, you know, gold, yeah, they're going to dollar's going to collapse and the end of the world, and they're going to make coins again, and that's the future. That's why gold's going to go through the roof. And I'm going, no, that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. In my book, it's never going to happen. So we had a little bit of criticism of modern monetary theory, which is not as crazy as it sounds, because the way that you stop hyperinflation is that once you've pumped all this money you've printed in and you get a little bit of inflation, you tax it away. But of course, we all know politicians, they'll print money and pump it into the economy and pay off all their mates and buy votes, but they'll never tax it away. Really, they won't. So the other half of the balance of modern monetary theory is that you've got to tax it away, which of course politicians will never do that. So that's the reason why that's never going to work. Not because you can't make it work by doing that, although the British apparently are going to try to tax it away. Good luck with that. So anyway, going back to gold. So I'm thinking about gold, and one of the things that occurred to me, everyone talks about gold as this uninflating thing. That's not true. Gold is inflationary. They dig up a lot every year. So if you take all the gold in the world, and then you look at all the gold that governments have stashed, the free float is quite small. And then when you count all, I think it's 2,000 tons, sorry, I can't exactly hold the numbers in my head, 2,000 tons a year is mined. There's actually a reasonably decent chunk of inflation in the gold supply every year, depending how you count the free float, okay? Because the overall float is not the same as a free float at all. Most of gold is tied up in vaults or, you know, in your watch or in your girlfriend's earrings. So the free float is quite small. So gold does inflate. But while I was thinking those thoughts, I thought, hold on a minute. Why do governments have all this gold? Now, a lot of people say it's because they're going to remonetize it. They're going to make, you know, the British are going to put sovereigns back into supply again. They're going to back their paper money. Not that backing paper money with gold is much use, really, when you think about it, because they're quite capable of saying, oh, yeah, by the way, yeah, you know, 10 to 1 of this, that, oh, it's 20 to 1 now. As they did at the end of the First World War. 1 ounce of silver, 5 shillings. After the 1920, 1 ounce of silver, 10 shillings. And then after 1947, funnily enough, after a war, no silver in your coinage. So anyway, why are they doing this? Why do they have huge piles of gold in these vaults? What is the purpose of that? Now, let me click on a button and see what happens. So ultimately, gold is the only currency in war. That's it. If you're fighting a war and you're losing, in particular, the only way you can pay for stuff is with gold. In the Second World War, all the gold in the world ended up in America at the end because, well, America supplied everybody, and therefore all the gold went that way, pretty much all of it. So gold is the currency you need in war, and it's not like, oh, it's going to be a war tomorrow, we better buy some gold. It's strategic, long-term national security, okay? So if you're a government, you hold at great cost all that gold for one single purpose. It's like, it's bullets. Gold is bullets. Now, let me click and see what I wrote next. The markets don't price today, okay? They price a year out. They take all the permutations that everybody thinks and they roll it up into one value. So today's gold price represents the demand and geopolitical issues of this time next year, okay? So gold will go the direction under this model that gold is a strategic commodity for governments, will go the way of geopolitical stress. Now, if you think about geopolitical stress, it's been getting worse. And if you think about the times when governments were selling their gold, it's the time of the end of history guy, Fujiyama, was saying, it's the end of history, everything's going to be fine now, you know, everything's wonderful. And governments went, yeah, well, we don't need so much of this gold now, do we? So they will sell it down. People like Gordon Brown, you could think of, was being a pacifist by selling down gold. If you haven't got a gold, how are you going to fight that war? You're not going to be able to, are you? Particularly if you're going to have a hard time fighting it. Yeah, so if you wanted to be a pacifist, if you wanted to not be involved in war, if you want to stop your government actually causing trouble, just sell all your gold. Then what? What are you going to do when you get trouble? You've got no money, have you, for that? You can't put gold in a submarine and send it to America for goods. Now, when the Philippines were conquered by the Japanese in the Second World War, the Americans shipped out the gold in a battleship. They threw the silver in the bay. Okay? So that gives you an idea of gold's role in conflict. Silver wasn't good enough for the currency. It wasn't what they wanted or needed. It was too light. They threw the silver in the bay. The Japanese actually fished it back out again, or a lot of it. But that was the idea. And of course, the Germans sent submarines of gold to Japan, for example. So this is the key to why governments have warehouses, vaults full of gold. Now, one thing is for sure, I don't think there's anybody here in this room that imagines for 1 minute that in the foreseeable future, there's going to be a drop in geopolitical tension. There's not, is there? When does it end? You've got a lunatic in Russia, you've got an alleged lunatic in America, you've got, all this terrible stuff going on in the Middle East, you've got China obviously making noises about Taiwan, you've got North Korea now deciding it's a good idea to go fight in Europe. I mean, when does tension go into reverse? There is no end in sight, okay? So you can look at it in another way, which is, what is actually creating all this tension? Well, I don't know about you, but most people seem to be driven insane by social media, yeah? And there's no way that people in the political level are not also getting driven, to lose their cool because of social media. So you could say that this increase in tension is absolutely systemic, from the schoolgirl who's going to school and stabbing herself in the arm with knives, all the way up to people in power. They're getting more and more generally stressed because of the way that new media is working. I mean, you only have to look at Twitter to see how everybody's stress levels are going up. So it's inevitable that there will be more geopolitical stress, because it's all, a pyramid of psychology, isn't it? So there is no end in sight of a ratcheting of geopolitical stress. Now, if you're in government and you feel that stress is going up, there's only one thing you can do. Well, there's many things you can do, but you are going to buy gold. Yeah, you are just going to keep buying a little bit here, a little bit there, not just one country, all of them. You are going to be building up your reserves because you have to. You can't see geopolitical stress rising every month and not buy more gold, because that is the purpose of gold in your basement. So as stress goes up, you've got to buy more gold, and you can see it out there right now that places like China are buying more gold. What does China need more gold for? Ask yourself that. I mean, it's has big output of gold itself, and it's still buying it, yeah? Well, anybody that looks at the positioning of China, oh, young men, stop learning American. Oh, young men, stop playing computer games. Oh, young men, start getting fit. Why would they say that? What does that indicate to you? Yeah? Oh, Taiwan, it's getting a fatter and fatter red line. Yeah? And they're buying more gold. So, if you only have to know which way the market's going, you only have to know the big trend, the one that's not going to stop. You could say, very simply, well, I mean, in America, if the Democrats had won, would that have lowered global tension? I mean, they seem mighty keen on the war between Russia and European proxies and American proxies and poor Ukraine. They seem mighty keen on that. Yeah? What happened a couple of days ago? Oh, we reserve the right to nuke you. When have you heard that? When have you ever heard that? Right? So even if the Democrats had got in, it wouldn't be kumbaya, would it? And now you've got Donald Trump, who is, part of this. He's the king troll, isn't he? If you look at the way the world has gone, the desire to troll people, the desire to be outrageous, I might be being that right now, I suppose, has gone up. And that's been driven by the likes of Twitter. It's been driven by social media, where the troll gets rewarded. The troll gets the attention. I used to run a community of 3 million people that posted up until a few months ago. And the only way that you can stop a troll is to ignore them, right? If you give a troll attention, they feed on that. And of course, if you're a politician, you've now got to be a troll, because people will vote for troll. And you can see that everywhere you go. You can see that in the UK, you can see that in Argentina, you can see that in America. And Putin used to be a troll. He's now gone super troll, hasn't he? So, this dramatic uptick in, you could just say, the way that people are presenting themselves, but the dynamic that is being driven by social media is increasing the tension. And we've got at least 4 years of it, but this, Trump steps aside and, we get a Buddhist in the White House. You're still going to have Putin, probably. You're still going to have Iran. You're still going to have Xi. You're still going to have this never decreasing cycle of increase in global tension. Now, gold, I don't know what I put in my presentation, but I probably put those points in there. Let's step through and see if there's anything I missed out. So it's all well and good buying gold, and we've got 20% inflation, gold goes up 20%. That's you're standing still, aren't you? Okay, you've protected your fiat from being shredded, but you're not making a profit. But with this, gold will go up in real terms, because as a commodity which is linked to increasing global tension, its value will increase in real terms, because its use case will increase. Yeah. So there is a use case here for gold, and it's the biggest possible use case, which is war. And we all know we're stepping closer and closer to that. I think it's far away, personally, thank God, goodness. But it is nonetheless, we are going every day closer to it. And every step we take closer to it, gold will go up in real terms. So, as gold fans, that's really, really good news. And personally, from my point of view, and I was saying this to somebody in the audience here earlier on, every time you look at an asset to buy, try to find the one that will go up if global tension increases. Okay? So a good example, hibbity hobbity, buy property, as they say in Australia. So you want to buy property, well, buy it where it will go up if global tension increases. So if you're Scandinavian, where are you going to buy property? Not in Finland, right? But you might have a pop at buying it in Iceland, where nobody shows up in a world war. I think actually the British did in the Second World War, but nobody showed up in South America. Yeah? So if you wanted to buy property and you believe that global tension will continue to increase for however many years that's going to be, it's at least 4, and it's probably into further notice, right? You would buy it. Well, obviously the brain dead one is to buy it in New Zealand, which personally I don't think is such a great idea. It's too close to China. But Chile, for example, is equidistant from every single major combatant that would be in that war. So they don't have to be fighting. It's the mere prospect of them being increasingly likely to create a conflagration. That means you would buy it in Chile, because it's equally distant from all of them. And South America is the place in the last 2 major wars that nobody went to war in. So you go, I'm going to buy a property. Oh, I'm going to buy one in Chile. I'm going to buy one in Iceland. I'm going to buy one in Dubai. Right now, Dubai property prices are going through the roof, because if you're Ukrainian, you go to Dubai. If you're Russian, you go to Dubai. If you're Iranian, you go to Dubai. You buy a property. Properties, I think it's up something like 15% in the last 12 months, all my properties there are. So that is an example of how you can use the idea of increasing global tension to your investment advantage. Because you can say, oh, I want to buy a telephone company. Which telephone company is going to do best as tension increases? Oh, I'm going to buy a tech company. Which tech company is going to increase with a increase in global tension? So anyway, there is no end in sight for increasing global tension. And if anybody thinks there's a mechanism for it to come down, please tell me, because I'll sell my gold. But you know, there is no end in sight, and it's not a short-term trend. It's a, well, I mean, there is no end in sight. That's the key thing to remember. There is, right now, no end in sight. Right, you do not need to have World War III, even though the Russians are kind of saying, you better not stop us fighting in Ukraine because we'll nuke you. Is that going to happen? Well, that would certainly make gold go to 10,000, but, you know, I don't think we have to imagine that it's going to start or ever happen. But the road towards that point is long, and we're on it. And, I mean, anybody who disagrees with we're on a road to ever-increasing global stress, anyone who believes that we're not, put their hand up. Okay. He put his camera up. I'm not sure that's the same. Okay, so here you go. I'm glad I put something a bit more interesting in here. So here's a chart. You see, I like to, I don't think of myself as a chartist, but I draw a lot of charts because charts are very, very, very good at predicting the past. And that's my little joke about charts. But that is actually very useful because if you can see what happened in the past, you can understand how things move. Okay? So you can see in the past, for example, there's a parabola in gold way back, and then there's another one forming right now. So if you actually let your brain fill in the blanks, because I mean, everybody puts their charts and they just fill out the border. In fact, the old sign of a very bad financial website was they put the last bar actually on the border so you couldn't damn well see it. But here's an example where you can actually take your chart and give yourself a few years to imagine where that chart is going. So if you let your brain, which after all is incredibly good AI, or in my case, natural stupidity, you can actually fill in with your neural network where it's going to go. So give yourself some space. So you look at that chart, fill it in. Yeah, fill it in. Well, you should get something that looks like this. Yeah? Because how many times have you seen that chart in other assets? Time and time and time again. Right now, it's Bitcoin. And over the last couple of years, I've been predicting Bitcoin at 120,000 when it was, you know, 20, 30, 40,000. And you can read all that in Forbes just to assure yourself that I don't predict the past and that I'm quite good at calling the future. Now, most of you would think, wow, that's great. If that happens, that'll be great. Probably not great, actually, because that's a really high level of tension or a very high level of inflation. Inflation's gone now. I mean, they were complaining that inflation had gone from 2% up more than expected to 2.4%, or whatever it was yesterday. 2.4, 2.5%, it's not an issue. 3% is not an issue. Even if they're filling in the figures, it's really not that bad. Yeah? So, you know, inflation, they know how to deal with inflation, right? People seem to think that inflation is governments cocking up. It's not. There's only one set of people that can make inflation. They do it on purpose, and it's government. If you look at the history of inflation, it always comes after a war because they're all bankrupt and they've all got to renege on their debts. So they make inflation so the debts shrink. Yeah? And, you know, COVID has the same financial outcome as a decent-sized war. So guess what? You get inflation. Yeah? So anyway, they've squeezed that out now. They know how to squeeze it out. You know, the Fed is responsible for rescuing loads of people from bankruptcy time and time again, and it's not all bankers. And, you know, like, if you want to know what inflation is going to do, just look at the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. And if you really want to know what they're up to, look at the reverse repo, which is the excess money in the system. And you can see them pulling and pushing the lever to try to navigate around things like the banking crisis last year. And they do a really good job on that. But the fundamentals are, because as I say, we're not really interested in investing in something that's going to just respond to inflation and keep us where we were when we started, although that's been quite an interesting place to be over the last 2 or 3 years. We want capital appreciation, and we're going to get it because this tension is going to increase over and over again. So there's my prediction. that is not necessarily, it's not fate, right? It's a roadmap, yeah? So when you draw charts like this, you could consider it, well, this is what it looks like it's going to do, and it should kind of stick to that. And as long as it's sticking to that, I know where I am. As long as it's, within bounds, you know where you are. When things change, you can then say, well, hold on a minute. It's not doing that anymore. What has changed? Yeah, because there are many unknown unknowns in the market. And, when they come, the trend changes. That's what changes trends. So, but that, to me, is what we're going to see. And I don't know, what is that, 5,000? I can't see. But anyway, we're in a vertical right now. And that vertical is because you'll see, I mean, when gold goes like that, you'll find out why later. People seem to think that, it's going to happen. But it's already happened, right? Because information, and money for that matter, flows like honey. It gets everywhere. The moment you take the lid off it, it's all over the place, yeah? And so when somebody in some government somewhere, they've had a meeting and they said, oh, we're going to make a very, very rude press release about how we're going to nuke everybody, they go straight out and buy gold or whatever the equivalent is, yeah? So when it's moving, it's coming in gold. So bear that in mind. So don't think that it happened. Think that it's coming, because that can actually inform other investments that you might want to bear in mind. I don't know if I've got any more. Have I got any more? No, that was it. Let me go back to that, because that's a good place to end on. So, Kai, do you want to give any questions?
We can definitely do questions.
Questions? Anybody got any questions? The guy that smiled at me 3 minutes ago with the glasses, that's him.
Okay. So outside of gold, assets that do well with this global tension, we said land, obviously.
Well, I mean, it depends where it is. I mean, there's not much point buying land in Poland.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, so you've just got to think what's going to work out, what people are going to go, oh my God, it's getting, I'm sweating, I'm waking up in the middle of the night now, I need to do this. So, for example, anything, I mean, even things like engineers, which are really unpopular, if you've got to start bashing metal to build stuff to throw out the other side, yeah, if there's a metal that's particularly useful, this is metal that always stumps me, the one that I use for armored piercing rounds, for example. That's the sort of thing. What's that, sorry? Tungsten, that's the one. I always want to say thorium. Tungsten, for example, scandium, those sort of things. Anything that is, people are going to say, oh, we need more of that. Yeah?
Do we want to buy the paper in those things, or do we want to buy the physical assets? Like, great, we want to invest in food for this.
Where there are resources, there are predators. And paper is the easiest thing in the world for predators to swap for your hard-earned. And therefore, I'm very, very, very... See, back in the credit crunch, one of the big hidden variables, if you take a Black-Scholes, there's all these variables, but there's a whole load of other ones which are hidden, which are invisible because they don't move. And then the market will change until those hidden ones start to be an issue. Nobody knows they're there. And then it becomes a very big issue, and then it becomes chronic, and then they blow up, right? And a hidden variable back in 2008 was counterparty risk, yeah? Oh, wait, I'm a rich man, I've got all this money in the bank. Oh, the bank's gone bust. I'm now poor, right? Nobody thought about counterparty risk until there was a lot of it, right? So paper, counterparty risk. Oh, you hold gold, do you? Said FDR. It's mine now, right? I mean, the Americans, of all people, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, in 1930, boom, confiscated everybody's gold. Yeah? So you've really, really got to concern yourself about issues like that. And of course, if a government will do it to you, certainly some geezer who's selling you some tungsten paper. And I mean, how many tracker funds, ETFs, do you look at and see? That's not tracking. I mean, GLD doesn't track, not properly, right? I mean, so paper, well, you like gold because you don't like paper. I think that's probably a good strategy. So anyway. Sure, sure. Where there are resources, there are predators.
When the big companies are picking up?
Okay, a long time ago, in a galaxy far away, I wrote a book called The Twain Maxim. And for you people that are interested in small equity, gold equities, you should read that, because it breaks down a lot of what goes on in the gold equity market, because I got to see that from inside, so to speak, as a platform for small cap speculative share investors, and how that market can work, right? In equities, you've really got to bifurcate those equities between scammers and real people. And it's bloody difficult. It's so difficult. Yeah? But anyway, read that book. I wrote it 10 years ago. It's still as valid today as it was back then, as it was in 1960, as it was when Mark Twain came up with the Twain Maxim at the end of the 1800s. Thank you.